Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into the weeds on the CompTIA A Plus certification. It's pretty much the go-to starting point for IT support careers, right?
It's absolutely right. It comes up constantly.
And you've given us a ton of material to sift through here. Official CompTIA A info, comparisons between exam versions, bits from study guides, practice test examples, even like forum posts from people actually studying for this stuff.
Yeah, a real mix. Reddit threads, official docs, the works.
So our mission today is basically to unpack all that, figure out what A Plus is, why it's such a big deal, and crucially, what's changing, especially with these new exam versions coming up.
Exactly. And the sources are pretty unanimous. A plus is seen as the standard for starting out. You see it everywhere in job listings for entry-level IT support.
And they keep mentioning it's vendor neutral.
Uh-huh.
For someone new to IT, what does that actually mean in practice? Like, why should they care?
Oh, it's huge. It means the skills you learn aren't just for, say, Dell hardware or only Windows networks. It's foundational. So the concepts, hardware, networking basics, they apply across different brands, different technologies. You're learning principles that work with Cisco or Netgear or whatever you encounter. It gives you flexibility.
Which makes sense for those first jobs, right? Help desk, IT support specialist, technician, the kind of roles that are the front line.
Precisely. You could land anywhere, so that broad base is key.
And the scale is pretty massive, too. The sources mention over 1 million techs have this cert.
Yeah, over 1 million globally. It really shows how much employers trust it as a baseline validation that you know your stuff.
So how do you actually get it? It's not just one test, is it?
No, you need to pass 2 separate exams. They're computer-based. They call them Core 1 and Core 2.
Okay, Core 1 and Core 2. Looking at the objectives and guides, what's the basic split? What does each one cover?
All right, let's break it down. Core 1, that's like the 220 1101 or the newer 1201. It generally focuses on the physical side of things, hardware components.
Like CPUs, RAM, motherboards.
Yeah, exactly. Storage devices, too. And networking fundamentals, cables, IP addressing, basic network devices, mobile devices are in there, plus the basics of virtualization and cloud computing. And, of course, troubleshooting hardware and network problems.
Got it. So Core 1 is the tangible stuff, how things connect. Then Core 2.
Core 2, the 1102 or 1202, shifts more to the software and operational procedures. So operating systems are big here.
Installing, configuring Windows, Mac, Linux.
Yep, and troubleshooting them. Security concepts are key best practices, identifying threats. Then there's software troubleshooting, dealing with app errors, driver issues, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And importantly, it also covers IT operational procedures, things like documentation, change management, maybe some basic scripting, and those really crucial soft skills communication, customer service.
That makes sense. Build the box, then make the software work and keep the user happy and safe. And the tests themselves, they aren't just memorization, right? I saw mentions of performance-based questions.
Exactly. You get multiple choice, yeah, but the performance-based questions, or PBQs, are a really critical part. They simulate real tasks.
Like what?
Like maybe configuring a wireless router within the exam interface, or using command prompts to troubleshoot a network, or setting up permissions in Windows. The study guides really stress practicing these.
Because they want to see if you can do it, not just know it.
Precisely. Practical application is key.
Okay, so this brings us to a really timely point. From the sources, these exams get updated. CompTIA refreshes them, what, every 3 years or so?
Typically, yes, to keep pace with technology.
And we're right in one of those transition periods now.
Yeah.
The current version, the 1100 series, is still active.
Right, the 1101 and 1102.
But the new 1200 series is launching, the 1201 and 1202.
Yes, the launch was anticipated for spring 2025, and that sets a clock ticking for the old ones.
How long do people have?
The sources suggest the 1100 series exams will retire about 6 months after the new ones launch. One source even gave a specific date, possibly tied to an older version, but indicating the pattern. September 25th, 2025 for retirement.
Wow, okay, so that's a date anyone studying the 1100 series needs to circle on their calendar.
Definitely. It adds some urgency.
So this is where it gets really interesting based on what you pulled. What's actually different? Why the update? What's the 1200 series emphasizing more?
Well, the changes really reflect how IT support itself is evolving. A huge one is the increased focus on cloud and virtualization.
More than just knowing the definitions.
Oh, yeah. The 1201 objectives seem to go deeper into things like SaaS applications, think Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, and supporting users using them. Also more on virtual desktops, VDI, and troubleshooting in hybrid environments where you've got stuff both on-prem and in the cloud.
That makes total sense. Everyone's using cloud services now. What else?
Then there's the expected updates to hardware and software. The 1100 series covered tech up to early 2021. The 1200 series brings in newer things like DDR5 RAM.
Which is pretty standard now.
Exactly. And NVMe storage, those super fast SSDs, plus updated OS coverage for the latest Windows, Mac OS, and Linux versions. The objectives list these newer specific techs.
Keeping it current. What about security? Feels like that's everywhere.
Absolutely. And the 1200 series definitely bumps up the security focus, especially in Core 2. It's not just basics anymore.
Deeper stuff.
Yeah, more emphasis on endpoint security, understanding threat detection methods a support tech might actually see, and generally securing modern, often distributed IT environments. You can see this reflected in the percentage weighting changes for the domains.
We'll get to those percentages.
Mm-hmm.
And troubleshooting the core job. Are the problems getting harder in the exam?
It seems like it. The sources suggest expanded troubleshooting scenarios, more complex, real-world stuff. Think problems that cross domains like a software install failing because of network permissions, or more advanced network config issues, or, those cloud service problems we mentioned.
More integrated problem solving.
Right. And finally, a really relevant addition is the focus on supporting hybrid workforces.
Remote workers.
Exactly. The 1200 series specifically addresses skills for supporting users who aren't in the office. Remote diagnostics, troubleshooting home network issues affecting work access, supporting collaboration tools. It's a direct response to how work has changed.
That feels incredibly necessary now. You mentioned the percentage weightings shifting in the domains. Can you break that down a bit based on the CompTIA A comparisons?
Sure. For Core 1, comparing the new 1201 to the old 1101, mobile devices seem slightly less emphasized percentage-wise.
Okay.
But networking gets a bump up. Hardware and network troubleshooting is slightly down, maybe because some complexity shifted into networking or cloud virtualization.
Interesting. And Core 2, comparing the 1202 to the 1102.
There, operating systems and operational procedures see slight decreases in their percentage weight.
And where did that weight go?
It shifted mainly to security, which got a noticeable increase, and also software troubleshooting, which increased too. It lines up perfectly with the trends we just talked about: more security, more complex software fixes.
Looking at those shifts really tells a story about where CompTIA sees the job heading.
It's a great way to see their priorities, yeah, and guides your study focus.
But with all these updates, surely some things stay the same, right? The absolute basics.
Oh, absolutely. The core IT support foundation is still critical. You still need to know hardware inside and out, installing components, different connectors, power supplies, storage types like SATA and NVMe, RAM, CPUs. The basics haven't gone away.
Can't troubleshoot software if the hardware isn't working.
Exactly. And networking fundamentals remain vital. TCP/UDP, ports, common devices like routers and switches, knowing how to use tools like crimpers and cable testers, all still essential. The practice tests you found confirm this. They still quiz heavily on ports and tools.
So the core principles are stable, even with new tech layered on top. And OS troubleshooting.
Always. Proficiency in Windows, Mac OS, Linux, using command line tools, managing processes, basic security settings within the OS, that's bread and butter, still central to both exam series.
Makes sense.
And don't forget those soft skills. Good communication, customer service, still tested, still crucial for the job. The overall exam format, multiple choice plus PBQs, that also stays the same.
Okay, so for you listening, you're facing this choice. Study for the 1100 series before it retires, or aim for the new 1200 series. What's the general advice from the sources?
Well, the consensus seems to be, if you're just starting your A-plus journey now or planning to soon, the recommendation is generally to target the 1200 series, assuming, it's available and the study materials you want are out there.
And the main reason for that?
It's simply the most current. Your knowledge will align better with what employers are looking for right now. Plus, the certification is valid for 3 years, so starting with the newest version gives it the longest shelf life, so to speak.
Future-proofing your cert.
Right. And it prepares you better for those areas getting more emphasis: cloud, security, hybrid work support.
But what if someone's already deep into studying the 1100 series?
That's the exception. If you've already invested significant time and money into 1100 materials and feel you're getting close, the practical advice is often to stick with it. Push through and pass both 1101 and 1102 before that retirement date, likely around September 2025.
Because switching midstream could mean buying new books, new courses.
Exactly. It could add time and cost. So it's a judgment call based on how far along you are versus that deadline.
Okay, that's helpful context. So whichever path you choose, 1100 or 1200, what are the key strategies for actually preparing? What do the sources say works?
Right. How should you study? First thing everyone agrees on: Download the official exam objectives from CompTIA for your specific exam version. That's your blueprint.
Don't skip that step.
Absolutely not. Use it like a checklist. And as we've said, make sure your study materials match the version you're taking. An 1100 book won't cut it for the 1200 exam.
Makes sense.
What else? Hands-on practice is huge. The sources stress this constantly. It's not just theory. Use virtual labs or even build a cheap home lab if you can. Practice installing things, configuring networks, running commands, troubleshooting.
Getting your hands dirty, virtually or physically.
Yeah.
Especially for those PBQs.
Definitely. You need that muscle memory. Another thing mentioned is engaging with communities, study groups, online forums like the CompTIA subreddits.
Why is that helpful?
You can ask questions, see how others solve problems, explain things yourself, which really helps solidify your own understanding, and just stay motivated. You can be a grind studying alone.
True. And practice tests, non-negotiable.
Oh, totally essential. Use practice tests and review questions to see where you stand and find your weak spots. Some sources mention sites like Exam Compass that have quizzes on really specific topics, ports, connectors, security tools. That helps drill down.
And people seem to find success mixing resources too, right? Like maybe watching video courses. Professor Messer often comes up in those Reddit threads.
Yes, his free videos are very popular.
And combining that with practice exams and flashcards.
Yeah.
Maybe using something like Quizlet or even making their own.
Absolutely. Creating your own study aids is a great active learning strategy. And comprehensive guides, like the Mike Myers all-in-one book mentioned in one source, are still a go-to structured resource for many.
The key seems to be finding a mix that works for your learning style, but making sure hands-on and practice testing are definitely in there.
Exactly. And always targeting the specific exam version you plan to sit for. A solid plan with the right resources is crucial.
Okay, this has been a really thorough deep dive. We've covered what the A+ is, its value, the core content, and these really important updates with the 1100 versus 1200 series. Understanding those changes and planning your study path seems critical right now.
It really is. And, thinking about how the exam is shifting more cloud, more security, supporting remote work, it does make you wonder, right? It leaves us with a thought for you, the listener.
Yeah.
Given these trends reflected in the latest A+ version, how do you think the actual day-to-day job of an entry-level IT support specialist is going to keep evolving over the next few years? What skills become even more critical?
That's a great question. What does this roadmap tell us about the future of that foundational IT role? Something to think about.
Definitely.
Well, we hope this exploration of the CompTIA A+ has been useful for you. If you did find it helpful, maybe give the video a like or subscribe to the channel. It genuinely helps us continue doing these deep dives.
Yeah, it lets us know what's resonating.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.